Am I still?
And welcome to the Midday Show. That is the best part about that is I could just make it go as long as I wanted to.
First of all, my forearms are starting to get tired, and it's harder than you think.
No. I know. I don't have to think. I know how hard it is. That's why I made you do it one time. I'll never make you do it again. Welcome to the Midday Show. I'm Jeff Everett. He is Mark Messina. We were really worried about were we going to have anything to talk about? What were we going to say? And then
we started bombing people and giving money back. And
Joe came through for us today. So we're going to talk about student debt. We're going to talk about Biden's choice to what do we want to call it? Relieve some of it. What's the word? What's the spin you want to put on it?
Buy votes? I don't know.
Buy votes, whatever you want to say.
Well, it's not all bad. There are some people who will benefit that could use the benefit. There's no doubt about it.
Yes.
It's not like one of these rich tax things where the rich people just got richer.
Yes. Very few things are black or white.
Right.
I would say this is a really, really, really dark shade of gray.
Yes.
Okay. We're going to talk about quiet quitting because I think you'll find it fascinating.
Because you're about to quietly quit?
No, I wouldn't. I don't know if I would quietly quit. I feel
you'd flip tables and stuff.
Probably not flip table, but I feel like you would know. I don't think it would be quiet. And then Tiger's new league. You got to talk me into it. I don't know if I'm into it or not. So we might get to Tiger's.
Speaking of quietly quitting, I saw are we going to talk about Iowa baseball too?
No, it's not on there today. But.
Okay. Well, I saw a comedian once years ago. He's a black guy. And he was talking about the difference between the way white people get fired and the way black people get fired.
Okay.
And he said white people get fired. And they say, you'll get your last check in the mail. And you say, okay. And you walk out. He goes, black people are flipping tables and saying, I am not walking out of here until I have a check in my hand.
Sure.
And I wish I remembered who, because it was not a famous, it might have been, MTV used to have a show called the Half Hour Comedy Hour.
Okay.
And they would have some of these guys that weren't, the Chris Rocks and the Jerry Seinfelds. Sure. They were up and comers. And that might have been where I saw it.
Okay.
But it was funny. It was a good show.
It
was a good show.
Comedy Central still does like the half-hour specials.
Okay.
Where it's kind of clean cut, like 22 minutes, like you're in, you're out.
Well, and I think these, if I remember, it was like 3 10-minute segments or whatever. Okay. Like this guy got a couple minutes until a commercial break, and then the next guy got it. But yeah. Half-hour comedy hour. That was MTV back in the day.
10-second answer. How are you feeling? Because I don't think I would have been able to continue on if I didn't know.
No, I am. I think I am good. I got one kid off to college. I got another kid going off to college. It is like transition week. I went on the big screen last night and watched E.T.
Yeah, you're a couple days too late. You should have. They should. If they were in college 5 years ago, you'd be counting dollars today.
Well, I'm a little annoyed with Biden, but we'll get to that in a minute. Not that this is the first time. Like you said, I think you summed it up well because I made a negative comment about our president, and you said, no, you don't. Like if Joe was your grandfather, he would be great. Yeah. And you're like, but I don't think my grandfather should be running the country. And I kind of agree wholeheartedly.
There's a lot of people, like anybody who gets overly upset about Trump or Biden or Obama or Bush or whoever it is. I just always think to myself, like, you have, like, most people in their lives have numerous people that are like these people that upset you for a different reason. They have different viewpoints than you, different thoughts. They're too young, they're too old, they're too this, they're too that. But like, they're in your life and they're your family or they're your friends or like, and it's okay. The difference though is none of those people are running the country. Yes. That's the difference. Yes. Really, that's what it comes down to. Student debt forgiveness, the Biden administration student loan debt plan. $20,000 if you went to college on Pell Grants, $10,000 if you didn't receive Pell Grants. Forgiveness only applies to those earning less than $125,000. I love the wording on that. Only applies to and then you can also have your student loan pause extended one final time through this winter at the end of the year. Payment based on income. If you have undergraduate loans, you can cap repayment at 5% of your monthly income. Those are like the very, very basics. There's some other stuff that I'm sure you and I will get into as we start to talk, but that's just the general gist of it if you have not seen it released yet.
So my immediate question is, can I take loans out today?
My immediate answer based off of what I read is no, you cannot.
See, this is why for the moment, I hate Joe Biden. Because you get people that like, there are going to be people like me who have, who our kids didn't take out loans because parents paid for it. Because, we saved. We didn't buy the fancier car. We didn't take the extra vacation. You saved money up because you made choices. And now you're looking back and you're rewarding people who made the other choices who are like, yeah, we'll blow the money and have our kids take out loans, or we'll take out loans, or whatever, whoever the case may be, whatever it's in. And so, like, I get it, but it's,
well, here's the weird, because the way people word this is going to be interesting, because I think a lot of people that are upset with it are going to say, who are you helping? Like, who are you really helping? But what's going to be weird is, like, who are you rewarding? Because in a weird way, you're not just helping some people, you are kind of rewarding people for making a choice that I don't know if it needed to be rewarded.
Well, the people who were fiscally responsible are now being told there was no real need to be fiscally responsible.
To a point, to an extent. Because one of the disclaimers that you and I should add as we're talking about this is we are aware he's not forgiving all of student debt. It is there are benchmarks, there are certain points that, the 20,000, 10,000, depending on what it is, there's certain income. So we're not sitting here implying like everything's been forgiven and if you took out student debt, like you're good to go. But there is this idea of like some people are going to be rewarded for making a choice that I'm not saying was irresponsible, but at the time you could make the argument people made more responsible choices and they're now kind of not benefiting. Like how, what's the way I mean,
it's not like they're being hurt because it's not like, but the people who splurged and said, I'm spending the money or whatever. And I know people who said they make their kids take college loans for responsibility purposes and things. I get all that. But, when you have this pile of money and you're like, no, I'm going to save this for my kid's college.
Yeah.
So or you have a pile of money and you're like, I'm going to blow the whole pile. And my kid's college, they can whatever.
Right.
And the people who blew the whole money, now they're like, oh, well, we'll give you a kickback. And the people who were responsible and didn't take any college loan, like, I feel like I should get a tax credit or something because I didn't take any college loans and I paid. Now, I have a kid who's starting her junior year and a kid who's starting her freshman year.
Yeah.
So it's not like I've, been overrun. I haven't sent 5 kids through college and all that stuff. So I'm not crying like that much. But it's just, I think everyone in my situation right now who did not take out loans, who paid for their own kid, hates Joe Biden right now. Because they're like, oh, great, I was responsible and you helped the people. And I'm not saying they were irresponsible.
Right.
But,
but
some of them were.
Sure.
Because there are certainly some of these people who are like,
that's another debate because we're going to fly around all over the place. One of the other debates to have is, do you feel these loans were predatory? Because I do think there are people who didn't take the loans, who maybe they didn't want to go to college, or they worked their way through college, or whatever it may have been. And there are people that look at that and go like, predatory, like just don't sign on the dotted line. And so I think that is a functional debate as well. Because if you feel these loans were predatory, I feel like your argument pro debt forgiveness becomes stronger. So it just depends. I lean towards the side of I feel like the loans are a necessary evil. I don't know if I necessarily view them as predatory, but certainly people who want to go this route, if you want to be an engineer, if you want to be a doctor, I get that there are people that feel like they were pigeonholed into having to do this.
Yes, and I don't know the ins and outs of like the payment plans and the interest rates and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I have heard that some people, they borrowed, X, and it's not only just turned into Y, it's turned into like Y squared.
Sure.
So I do get that.
Yeah.
That there is that predatory aspect. I'm trying to think of an example where like, I use the bad analogy of like, it's like library forgiveness week when you have a book that's overdue by 6 months and the library just wants the book back.
Right.
And they're like, we don't care about your fine or whatever, just bring the book back for free. And I get that. But the person who read the book and took it back is really like no worse off. And the person who shoved the book under it's like, you're not you're letting that person off, but you're doing it for a good, so someone else can read the book, because if you don't, you're never going to get the book back if you're in the library. And I get that. In this aspect, I don't know, you're almost like sticking your tongue out at the people who just paid it up front.
Yeah.
You know, it would be like credit card forgiveness.
Yes.
Like, hey.
Well, that's the weird part about this is like, why, like at what point, like when you say who are you helping, at what point did this become the thing to be forgiven?
Right.
Like to your point, like there's all sorts of debts all across the country and at different levels of government. And at some point, like this took on this like forgiveness thing.
Because it sounds good.
I guess. And I know that for years and years and years, we've been like pro education, like everyone should have a chance, like everyone should, but like, this is bizarre. Like let's do this first. Can I read some numbers to you first?
Sure.
Because there's some numbers here that
I like numbers.
There you go. They're saying that this will help about 43 million Americans have federal student loan debt. A third of those owe less than $10,000.
Okay.
So a third, so we're talking 15 million. Is that fair to say? Ish. 15 million. This should cover what's left over of their student loan debt.
Okay.
So I maybe should retract what I said earlier. Like for 15 million people, they might be going like this.
Yes.
So there, I take that back a little bit. Half owe less than 20,000. The total amount of federal student debt is more than 1.6 trillion currently. Nearly 1/3 of all American students take out loans to pay for college. The average balance of that is just under $38,000. So that's according to the federal government.
Okay.
So that's kind of like the broader aspect of the
I read a
numbers
thing,
that
or I saw a thing when they started talking about this. So much of the student loan debt is grad school.
Yeah.
And I want to say like 50% of it, even though not nearly as many people go to grad school as undergrad, but you get into like med school and the ones that go on and on.
Sure.
So yes, but it's, you know, it's not, again, it's not going to help the uber rich people because they have, like, they're over the threshold.
Yeah.
Now, the other question is, did they know, like, if this is just made out in the kid's name and there's no parent co-signer,
sure,
then, well, none of these 19-year-olds are making $125,000.
I would assume that's fewer and farther between. I would assume most people that would qualify for that probably had their parents co-sign. But it also goes back to like that number. A married couple up to $250,000 annually can qualify for this. So if you're a married couple making over $200,000 annually, like you're included in this. And to me, you are, I mean, I know you're not like the top 1%, but boy, are you doing better than the majority of Americans.
Well, and it also depends like regionally. Yes, if you're making $220,000 as a couple and you live in Manhattan, then you're living in a refrigerator box. But if you live in central Pennsylvania, you're doing well.
Sure.
So wherever, and if your kids, you know, going to Bloomsburg and you live in central PA or, you know, wherever they're going, you know, you're doing fine. And so those are geographically it matters too.
I see what you're saying. Here's my biggest issue with it. If you will just hang with me here for like 5
I'm good.
minutes. All right.
I hang on your every word. I don't know if you haven't realized that.
This is my biggest gripe, because I agree with you. Nothing's black and white. I'm sure there are people today who truly need this, will benefit from it. Mommy and daddy are not there to help them. Like, I'm sure there are people today who truly will benefit from this.
Absolutely.
However,
and I'm happy for those people.
Sure. I think they're going to be hard to find, but yes, I'm happy for those people as well. This is my biggest problem. Nothing, like the base of the problem, none of it was actually fixed. And you know, like my wheels have been turning about this now for about a week, because I actually came into you and I said, like, if Biden forgives student, like we're going to have a show. Here's my biggest issue. The actual problem isn't the debt. It's the loans being given out, right? None of this, like some of it says like you can only have to pay back 5% of undergrad and all. So there are some things that help with it, but like you still have the same college loans. Like you still have the same people and the same aspects of people going out and trying to get this money so that they can go to college, and they're still going to go into debt. Like it's still the same system it's always been. So that's my first problem. You didn't actually you didn't rip the root out and like actually solve anything.
No, I know. You just put a Band-Aid on one cut, but
Yes.
there's going to be each year there's going to be new cuts.
Totally. Education. You didn't actually fix the value of a degree either. Like
No.
we've argued now for quite some time that like the value of degrees keeps sinking, but yet like you're still going to have the same loans, you're still going to have the same costs of going to college. Like you actually didn't solve what the degree or the value of going to get it was. You just rewarded this finite group of people that just happened to have college loans at this given time, and they just like won a lottery.
Well, and it goes yes. It does.
Okay. And then the last thing also, like financially, you didn't really solve any of this. There's a chart that I'm going to try to dig up here in a second. Do you know if you gave $10,000 forgiveness, which is where they almost fell? Some will get $20,000, but $10,000 forgiveness. There's a chart that was given out by the federal government that shows that within 4 years, we will reach the same point financially that we are at today.
Okay.
So like when you say a Band-Aid, this is like the most minimalist of like minimal Band-Aids you could possibly put on this. So I just like, when you look at what the grand root of the problem is, none of this actually solved any of it.
Oh, listen, and this is the issue when you have presidents that are so old, like they don't care, because like what's going to be around 15 years from now? You know who's not going to be around 15 years from now? Trump and Biden and Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and like these people, they don't care.
Nancy Pelosi is going to live forever.
Nancy Pelosi?
She's going to live forever.
It's so like,
no, I get it. This is the one that they shared. This is from the Department of Education. It's also from a group. It's about like financial budgets. So their whole thing is working with the Department of Education, all these different government forms, and trying to come up with like a reasonable fiscal budget of like what America should look like. And what the chart demonstrates is like a 10K cancellation, 50K cancellation, and then a full cancellation. And it's literally a 4-year bump before we're back right where we were to begin with a $10,000 cancellation.
No, I'm with you.
So that's my bigger thing. And like you and I said, it's not everything's, the world isn't necessarily falling apart, but this feels for me like this was a very like dark gray one. There was not a lot of like middle gray. Today felt like a lottery for some, and you either won the lottery or you didn't.
It looks like a simple campaign promise.
Yeah.
This would be like the student council president saying, "Yeah, we get a half day today."
A little bit.
Yeah, you get to go a half day, and we're gonna have a picnic in the afternoon. And you're
It's
like, "Oh, great!" But
it's interesting.
By the way, before we go on to another one, I have a great trivia question for you. Are you done with student?
No, we have some comments. Maybe we'll hit them at the end. But go ahead, hit me with that.
Do you realize, which you didn't, but I will tell you this?
Go ahead.
It's the first time in American history.
Yes.
In 2024, we can have 3 former presidents running for president.
Interesting. Wait. Biden.
Yep.
Trump.
Yep.
Who am I forgetting?
Jimmy Carter.
Okay.
He's still alive. He has one more term.
So he could do it.
I think he's 96 or 98. Okay. But he is technically, why not?
No, I see your point.
First time in American history.
Interesting. He should just throw his ring in the hat, or his hat in the ring, just to make it happen.
Well, I get understanding that. I guess there was never really an official rule that you could only run twice. Like Washington set the precedent, everyone followed it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. It was precedent, not law, until. So I guess historically you couldn't. But in that grasp, we have 3 one-term presidents still alive and still able to go. Could you see if Jimmy Carter had a SNL should make a run at this?
Yeah. No, there's some of the comments are pretty interesting. So we'll hit these up at the end of it, because I think that it's interesting to hear both sides of it as we're going. Can I explain the quiet quitting to you? Because I'm really curious of your opinion on this. Just kind of like some new school, old school thoughts. So there's this concept going around. Younger Gen Z, millennial, whatever you want to call them, younger employed people.
How old are these people?
I would argue they're probably like
20s?
35 and below.
30?
In their 20s.
Oh, so you're one of them.
I'm weirdly at the top of like this, because here's the thing. I don't view myself as the generation above.
You're like a man without a
I've told
identity.
you,
You're that gap.
20 seconds. If you were born between 1985 and 1990, there's this weird gap where you had to do everything like your parents. But then when phones and the internet and everything exploded, you were still young enough to learn how to do all of it. So there was this weird middle ground where like I grew up like you, but I can do all the things your kids know how to do that you don't.
So
and
you
it's
just
this
think
weird
you're better than
five. I don't think I'm better than people. I just think it's
Oh,
this,
you do.
no, I don't.
I think you do.
I think if you're in that range, you're just this unique gap of time where you got the best of the generation before you, but you learned how to do all the things the generation under you can do.
I get your point, and I agree with most of your point. If you would
Yes.
have got the best of the generation before you, you would realize the brilliance of the 80s, both musically and theatrically.
So quiet quitting is this concept that younger employees now are really focused on their job titles. They're really focused on their roles at their work. And the concept is, I'm not doing anything that I am not compensated or paid to do in my contract or in my job title. Older generations are referring to this as quiet quitting because they're basically looking at it as you're just doing the bare minimum and you won't survive in my company doing the bare minimum. And so they're referring to it as quiet quitting because you're not showing up late, you're not causing a ruckus, you're not necessarily like you're doing your job, but you're quietly just working your way to the door because you're not exceeding the expectation.
Yes, I think to dive deeper into this, the whole psychology of the generations. Often, whatever we're through with parents or teachers or coaches or whatever, and when you come through this as a player, as a student, or just as a child, and you see these aspects, you're like, when I'm older and I'm in charge, I'm going to do it differently.
Okay.
And I think lots of us of my generation grew up in kind of a changing world, but we thought our parents were too strict and too vanilla and too, conservative. And as we got, because you saw the names, like when I went to school, there was one kid named Carson, and it was how in the world do you have a kid named Carson? Because everyone's named Mike or Joe or Tom or Matt or whatever. And I think the next generation was like, we're going to be different than our parents.
Sure.
And they went way further, but we lost the discipline aspect that there's so much with kids that's a negotiation.
Is it discipline though, or is it that younger generations? And again, like I'm not even sure where I fall yet. Or is it that younger generations just have a better bearing of the value of what they're actually doing because of that lack of discipline?
I think there's
there was this idea of like you get paid this wage and you just go above and beyond. Like you just do what your boss tells you and I think now there's this concept of like you could fire me tomorrow. There's actually no like this idea of like we're a family. Like, is that really true? Probably not. So there's this aspect of like, I'm going to do what's in my contract. I'm going to do what you're paying me to do. And anything outside of that, I either need a new job title or I need to be compensated accordingly.
It's interesting depending on what they're asking to do. But I think there's a generation, and if you're my age and you've seen kids grow up and through Little League and whatever, it might not be your kid, but you can certainly know kids. Like I know kids whose parents have told me my kids will only wear Under Armour.
Okay.
Like I can't imagine in like my generation growing up.
Right.
And we told our parents, I'm only wearing this. Then they were then go outside naked. I don't care. I'm not buying you that. Sure. And kids that I was of the generation where they made dinner and they put it on and you ate what was at the dinner table. Right. They didn't make 3 different meals for 4 different kids because they only made what the kids liked.
Right.
So, and there's a coldness to that.
Okay.
Of like, why would you intentionally make something your kids don't like? But there's also a value to that because while like I'll eat I'm sure, I don't know if my kids have ever seen a lima bean. Yeah. I'll eat lima beans. Sure. Because when they were made, I ate them. And I didn't love them, but I don't hate lima beans. And as you go through these, I've had most of these vegetables that I'm sure my kids have never even seen. And so there is a pro and a con to all of it, but I just think there's a lot of the world of when I was a kid, and probably when you were a kid, because you grew up on the farm, and that's how I see
That's
farm
what it was,
living.
yes, farm.
That just like they told you something and you did it, and it wasn't a negotiation. But now you have to negotiate with your kids. Like, we'll do this, and then we'll do.
But isn't that? Yeah, I totally agree.
And I think it's gone to the workplace.
Yes, but this is what's funny though is like I almost feel like it belongs there more than it does at the home.
That what belongs there?
The negotiation.
Agree.
Like at home, I totally get at home. Like if you lived in a household where like what your mom and dad said went, and like and if you wanted to risk it, like good luck. I totally like yes.
Risk. I say
risk it. Like I get that.
Like,
but
dad's gonna kill you.
But in the workspace, like they're not your parents. You're only there because there is like an agreed upon number. Like there's an agreed upon number of like, I'm going to do X and you're going to give me Y. And I think I think the part where I agree with the younger generation, like if you're just showing up to work and you're an asshole, like, yes, like good, get rid of them. But I think what they're implying is like, it's being referred to as quiet quitting because they're not doing anything outside of what their contract deems them as fireable.
Well, I get what you're saying. The question becomes, I'm doing a real estate deal while we're doing the show. Sorry. Yeah. Like, is it, I think it all comes back down to everything else in life. Do you feel appreciated? Mm-hmm. Because there are people that, like here, I'll give you an example. Mm-hmm. We don't have cleaning people. Sure. So there's an aspect of we should vacuum, which now I've vacuumed, a couple times because vacuuming is easy. It's like mowing the grass inside. Sure. There's sink with dishes in. And there's an aspect of if people feel appreciated and feel included and feel, I'll go back to, I would say appreciated for the seventh time, mm-hmm. that for them to take 5 minutes and do, a sink full of dishes is not that big of a deal.
Right.
But if you've got a boss who's a jerk, who's on the golf course 4 days a week, who only cares about the bottom line and it's a little cold and heartless and he's like, hey, by the way, do this, and you have to do dishes, then I can see why the millennials are saying, screw you, do your own dishes. I'm a millennial. I eat McDonald's every day. Like I don't. So I think it's how you're treated.
The flip side of it, where the reason why I haven't made my choice yet of where I stand on it is like, I also think there are people my age and younger that have no clue how to do certain things that I think the older generation expects you to know how to do. And thus, like, there is a little bit of this, I think sometimes we're overqualified for stuff. Like, for example, like even the first day I walked in here, you probably never imagined I could produce an entire show.
No, I've said this before. You're way smarter than you look.
Okay. Right. Now, but on the flip side of that, I'm sure there are things that you or Jerry or Carrie would just naturally understand or do that I'm severely underqualified, because if I can't have my phone or YouTube to tell me how to do it, why in the world would I ever know how to do those things?
No, I get it.
So there is an aspect where I do understand the older generation kind of looking at some of this and going like, how could you not be compensated enough, or how could you not do that? Like, you don't even know how this started. Like, you don't even know where this company began or where, like, so I get that. Like, I understand that part of it. And I think that's why I'm struggling to choose which one.
I think there's a level, at least this is how it was for me when it hit me. When you get to an age or you get to a responsibility level, whether it's at work or whether it's, parenthood or home ownership or whatever, when you're young and there's a job that you don't really want to do, and you're like, if I don't do it, maybe someone else will do it. Mm. Well, then you get to the point where you're like, somebody's got to do it. And if I don't do it, maybe no one will do it. So I'll just do it.
Okay.
And then once you realize those, like running the vacuum cleaner is not that big of a deal. Sure. And I'm sure there are CEOs all over the place who would never run a vacuum cleaner. But our space isn't all that big. There's how many ever rooms.
No, I get it.
When I plug it in, it takes 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Maybe. So like there's just this aspect of yeah, I'm in no rush. Do I wake up this morning and say, hey, I want to run the vacuum?
Right.
But if it's 5 o'clock, it's always like when I'm the last person here because
Sure.
I'm not going to do it in the middle of the day while people are
Yeah.
working. But if I'm the last person here and I'm like, listen, I don't really have anywhere to be,
Yeah.
I'll plug it in and run the vacuum.
Somehow this segment turned in. This feels like a humble brag about you being willing to.
I've done it twice.
I've done
it twice.
Somehow this segment turned into. It feels like you just kind of making sure everyone knows that you clean the office.
But I will say this, and this is one of the crazy things about it, and I don't understand why. I would, in those jobs, if it was like do the dishes or run the vacuum, I hate doing dishes.
Sure.
And I don't know why, because you just fill the sink with water, you just like whatever, and it's I don't know. And this is maybe this is first world problem. When my house at every house I've been in since I've been an adult, we've had a little TV in the kitchen.
Yeah.
So if you want to do dishes, you can just watch TV while you do the dishes, and you can flip to ESPN or you can flip to whatever, and you can watch.
Right.
And here we don't have a TV, so to take 10 minutes to do the dishes is really boring.
Yeah.
But I don't know why 10 minutes of vacuuming is not boring. I don't know why. That's an interesting. Because I can't watch TV while I vacuum either, because we don't have a TV here. All right, we're done now. What's next?
Tiger's new league. Tiger Woods. He's good.
Well, hold on. Let's. I want to lay you down on the couch here. What household job will you never do? Is Hannah always doing because you hate it and you suck at it?
No, I actually this is like bizarro. I'm really good at the indoor work. I'm really bad at the outdoor work. I have very little interest in yard work. That kind of stuff just does not. I could care less if I never mowed a lawn again.
Well, see, I'll give you this. I suck at the outdoor except mowing.
Okay.
Because mowing is simple. You just go up and back.
Sure.
And you feel. I've always thought mowing the lawn, you immediately feel like you accomplished something because you can see what you just did. Okay. It's almost like washing a really dirty car. Like that I'm doing it. But trimming hedges and mulching, oh my God, mulching's the dumbest thing ever.
No, so indoor stuff, I'm super happy to help out with that stuff. I help with the laundry, I help with the dishes. I'm really big vacuum. None of that stuff bothers me. I'm really bad the outdoor stuff. I'm with you. I have no interest in cars. I have no interest in mowers. All of that kind of stuff that is considered I don't want to say
manly,
the manly side of it, but I just have very little interest in it. So
you know why we have no interest in cars?
Why?
Because we just don't know how they work.
But you
put gas in it, you turn it on, and it goes.
But I even remember growing up, I had Hot Wheels and things like that. But I could have cared less what the cars were, or the brands, or the models, or it's just something that's never.
I'm with you.
Yeah, it's just
Preach
never
choir.
gotten into it. There you go. Ryan says Jeff only likes raking beach sand. That's true. We have a beach up north, and I will rake it. Yes.
So you'd make a good caddy.
I could be a caddy. My issue with being the caddy is I would struggle not being the one hitting the ball.
Unless you suck at hitting the ball.
I would feel maybe that's true. Yes, if I could caddy for the best of the best, then yeah, I'd be really good at that. I'd be bad at caddying for somebody that wasn't the best of the best because I would just be I could have done that.
I will say this, and you don't watch any golf ever, but they have guys mic'd up, and it is surprising to me how much running dialogue there is between the caddy and the player. Okay. Because you get to the point, and I'm sure there are quiet golfers. I'm sure there are guys who don't have to say a lot, but okay, it's a 7-iron. Okay. And they talk about where they're aiming and where they're this, and this is where you want to go. And it is incredible. To me, golf is a very quiet game. And when you hear the caddies and the guys mic'd, they talk and talk and talk and talk. Well, it's just hit it and aim for the
Well, one of the most interesting things that I think people don't if you've never really, and I'm not a huge golf viewer, is how much math they're doing. The math that goes into so they gauge the distance, they take the club, they subtract. It is a constant battle of math every time, and then you're adding in the wind, and so sometimes you'll hear people golfing and they're just muttering 170 6-iron -40, and you can hear, and so there's that aspect to it that I think most people think well, I'll just grab this and and it's people that are really into it. It is a mathematical game as you're playing.
You know you've made it when your friends are making fun of you through text about things you said on the show.
Yeah, what did they make fun of you about?
The first world problem about having a TV in the kitchen and not having a TV.
TV in the kid, no, that's
It is a
great.
first world problem. There's no doubt about that. No.
Tigers new league, or you said the Iowa baseball team. I mean, I'll leave the floor to you if you want to.
I mean, I don't.
It's your call. There's no wrong answer here.
Well, the Iowa baseball team, since we're Little League and since we're we saw it yesterday with the black kid from Iowa with the stuffing in his hair from stuffed animals. First of all, the half of the world went up in arms because it was cotton. I don't think any of it's cotton. I think it's all synthetic acrylic. I think when you rip open a modern stuffed animal, I don't think it's cotton anymore. But people are like, it's racist and it's this and it's that, and the kids. And now other videos have come out that said that I saw a picture of a white kid and the black kid with their hair all covered. You said you saw something of them dancing.
There is.
Hold on, let me one more quick. And they were doing it to mimic the kid from Hawaii who has white hair, who's like
who they're friends with.
Yes, and who's been like the dominant force of, like one of the isn't that the guy that one of the big leaguers asked for this kid's autograph because he's like, hey, I saw you on TV, you're doing well. So like, it's all this 12-year-old innocence, and everyone has gone. It just shows how messed up society can be, telling other people what they should be mad at, what they should be offended at, and people that look for offense or wrongdoing in everything.
I said to you, I think it says a lot. You look at all the things that have been canceled or all the things that have been attacked. And like you and I, when we first did the show, we talked about Cosby. I don't know if you even remember that or not. And we've talked about how like there are certainly things that merit being canceled or merit being pushed off of the pedestal or however you want to put it. I said this to you yesterday. There's a little bit of a comedic side to it. There's a little bit of an ironic side to it of it took until 2022 for us to get Little League World Series. Like you could almost see like it kind of like everything was good. Everything was good. Everything was good. COVID happens. Everything's good. And you can just tell like the culture, it was just a matter of time until culture sunk its claws into something like the Little League World Series and tried to rip it down. And that is, to me, that says a lot of where we are culturally, media-wise. It started with the bed thing and having to get rid of the beds. It started with, and then this incident with the Iowa team. I just don't know. I don't know how anybody could be thrilled about living in a social culture where in 2022, we now can't even let the Little League World Series just like exist. It's pretty wild.
Well, I think, I do get your point. Even kind of beyond that, so many of these things are opinions, whether it's offensive or not, whether it's racist or not, whether it's, you need to know the intent and the heart of the person who delivered it. But I know, as a coach, if you ever talk about things that you say to your team or things and if you sat down with 50, normal, intelligent adult people, and you said like, this is what I said to the team, there are going to be people in the crowd like, you can't say that, or you shouldn't address that. And it's like, well, of course I should. And just because there's a percentage of people, like if 100% of the people think you're wrong, or if 90%, then there's an issue. But if you've got a group and there's this side says it's fine and this side doesn't say it's fine, it doesn't mean one side's right or wrong. If you don't think it's appropriate, then you don't say it. But just because someone else says it, and I know this from trying to be funny all the time and I'll tell a joke in a room and you'll see like a third of the people just laugh. A third, especially if it's a little borderline off color, or maybe it's really off color, that a third of the group will just laugh. A third of the group will try to pretend that they're not laughing because they feel a little bad. And then a third will be offended. Well, it doesn't mean the third that's offended is right. Like they can't look and say, you shouldn't be laughing. Like maybe they don't think it's funny, but it doesn't mean everyone else doesn't think it's funny. Well, and if no one is getting hurt by it, and then just because there are people on the internet who thought this was racist, it doesn't mean they're right.
But it's all like, yes, but I just want people to have like I don't want to say like a deeper angle, because sometimes you and I come on here and we'll talk about stuff for no reason at all. We just talked about lawn mowing and vacuuming.
Because I'm a good vacuum.
So I'm not saying everything has to have like this deep intent or this deep purpose. What I am saying though is like, I'll bring it up. When you and I came on and talked about the parade a little over a year ago, like there was an angle and there was an intent, and like none of it was about the kids. It was about like, it was a parenting conversation.
Right.
Like we wanted to talk about parenting and how difficult it is to parent kids today.
Right.
Even this morning, like we came on and we talked about the student debt forgiveness. And even with the student debt forgiveness, like it's not just like, oh, like F that guy, like Biden doesn't know what he's doing. Yeah.
Right.
Like we make some jokes, but it's also deeper. Like this is why we don't like it. Like here's the root of thing, everything else. It felt like with the Iowa thing, it felt like people saw a picture, jumped on it, and with no deeper angle or anything at all, just became outraged. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's not even about being like right or wrong. Like you kind of hinted at this. It's not about being right or wrong. It's just like, what are you really looking at? Can you take a step back? Is there a second photo? Is there a video? Is there context behind it? Like all this stuff. You and I talked about the Bulls third to fourth. And since then, it has come out that they did it in a Challenger series. Yes, why they did it in a Challenger series. And going back and listening to our conversation, I was so thankful that we were very lighthearted about the conversation.
Right.
Because if we would have came on here and like you made jokes and you were like, yeah, you know, I don't think it's funny. That's a fine statement. But if you would have came on here and been like, they shouldn't do that, it's awful, it's a disgrace to the game.
They should be thrown out.
Now it's like, and that's what people did to the Iowa baseball team. Like they went on a national forum and threw them under the bus, having none of the actual true context of what was happening or what was going on.
Correct. Well, and one of the other things is, and you know this from being an athlete, because of all of us that were athletes, especially college athletes. I shouldn't say all of us that were athletes, because depending on where you're from, but college athletes, we've all played with kids of different races, kids of different ethnicities. We've had friends of different, and you know, so these kids are friends. Like they go to school together, they grow up together. Sure. This isn't so. Like, if they get along, you have conversations and you do things and you make jokes with your friends about race that you would never make in a group where you didn't know anyone.
Sure. And
like I remember, and I probably should tell this story again because I'm sure there are people that are going to be offended. But I was talking to, I was sitting in the bleachers once with he's not even really just a guy I know who's black, and we were talking about what his kids, you know, what sports his kids are in. He said, my kid's actually, he's one of the things he does, he's on the diving team. Okay. And I looked at him with this, you know, this guy, I said, I didn't think black people could swim. Okay. And that is because if you've ever been around black, and you had, you know, black, sure. I'm sure you had black teammates at Lock Haven who couldn't swim. Yeah. And depending on where they grew up, my best friend in Baltimore that was black, I don't think he swims. He grew up in the city, whatever. But that's the immediate joke. Now, would I say that joke to a whole world of people I don't know? I don't know. Sure. But I said it to a guy I know. And his response was, I sink like a stone, but he's pretty good.
Sure.
So, like, there was nothing. It was levity. It was, you know, guys just having a conversation. Sure. And there was no ill intent and none was taken. And it was a light moment. But I know there are all kinds of people, probably my mother included, who would be like, oh, my gosh. You can't ask a black guy if he can swim. Right. Like, but you can if you're friends and if you know each. And there are all kinds of aspects of, you know, this is where the racial lines disappear is with friendships. So people are like, oh, this is racist because they're sticking this white thing in the black kid's hair. There's probably nothing racist about it. There may be nothing racist amongst the kids at all.
So one of the, like, to me, one of the most interesting things about stereotypes is stereotypes aren't the issue. It's how you use stereotypes that is the issue. So if you're using stereotypes to make judgments on people and then like hate or use against, then stereotypes are horrific, right?
Right.
But if you're using stereotypes to make light of a moment, if you're using stereotypes to help lessen somebody's load or to relate to somebody, there's this unbelievable video that's been going around for like a month now, and I've never told you about this. a kid dressed up like a Mexican. Like he had on like the fake black mustache, he had on the sombrero, and he had on like the colorful.
I know what you mean.
With the beads.
I know what you mean.
So he had that on, and he went on a college campus, and he asked
How
kids.
old? Is this like a teenager?
No, he's probably in college.
Okay,
Probably
but
a
it's not
college
like a
student.
10-year-old. It's
No,
okay.
like
gotcha.
he's an adult, we'll say.
Gotcha.
So he is on this college campus, and he's asking kids like, "Is my outfit offensive?" And most of the students said yes. And a couple of students said like, "Well, are you Mexican?" And the students were, and he would be like, "No." And the student would be like, "Yeah, then it's offensive." He then went and asked Mexicans if the outfit was offensive. And some of them, like, he was drinking with them, like they were excited to see him. They asked him where they got it. The one guy actually like gave him like a real sombrero, like his like real sombrero. Like, and so it's this idea of like, I'm trying to think how I want to say this. There's this idea of, do you know why you're upset? And are you upset for the right reason?
Right.
Because it's not enough to just look at something and go, I bet you that would upset somebody else. So now I am upset. And that's what I felt happened with the Iowa baseball thing. It felt like a group of people looked and said, like, that might be offensive to some people. Now it's going to offend me. And it just snowballed. And just so I don't know. I don't know how to get out of that. Like, I don't know how to get back to a place where a college student can wear a sombrero and a black mustache and it not be offensive to like other people, to his peers. I'm really, again, like we talk a lot about why I'm conservative or why I'm not. Like, those are the type of things where like I find myself kind of leaning conservative.
Here's how you can get out of it. Don't have an opinion.
But we're bad at that. You and I have opinions all the time.
But our opinion isn't militant.
Okay.
Our opinion isn't vicious.
Mm-hmm.
Like
if Jimmy did that, would you? And Jimmy came
what?
down this. If Jimmy said, "I'm going to school today," and he had on a sombrero and a black mustache and would you look at him and be like, "Jimmy, you can't do that"?
I would look like you're an idiot. But like, I don't know. Probably not. I don't.
Okay. Because this is probably where I feel the oldest I ever feel. A lot of my peers and people younger than me would look at Jimmy and be like, you can't do that. Like, it would be like absurd to them that he could do that. And yet, and like, I look at it and I'm just like, it's
well, and to your point of people protecting, you know, like the white kids on campus protecting the Mexicans by telling them that the Mexicans are going to be bothered.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this happened years ago. The University of Wisconsin had deemed that they were not going to play any other colleges whose mascot was of Native American, you know, they would not have come and played the Lycoming Warriors because they're not doing it. So they dropped Utah from their football schedule because Utah is the running Utes.
Yes.
Utah called them back and said, no, you don't understand. We work in conjunction with the Utes tribe. They are they're on our board of directors. Like, we do this. They are very happy that we are the running Utes. This is a good marriage. Mm-hmm. I think Florida State does the same thing with the Seminole Nation. So Wisconsin did this in defense of the Native Americans. We are going to decree this. And they're like, no, but we're working with the Native Americans. And they didn't do it anyway. So they're like, in their attempt to protect, they made it worse. Yeah. And there is so much, but even back to there's a story about this. And again, this goes back to sports and you know, theater and all these extracurricular things cover all bases. I had a buddy who was a football coach, and he's like, we're at this open like workout. It's kind of like open gym for but the football team. Sure. And he lived down and it was a very mixed race. And he said, there's a black kid standing over there. And he elbows one of the other kids on the team. He goes, who's that? And he goes, the one black kid looks at him and goes, it's just another black man, coach. It's just another black man. And he looks at the first kid. He goes, well, is this one fast? And he goes, yeah, not really. He goes, why am I the only coach with a bunch of black kids who can't run? And the kid looks at him and goes, I don't know. Yeah. No, they ended up being really good, and it was just. Sure. But like, I was shocked by this, that they thought the teammates were publicly humiliating a teammate on national TV when they're 12 years old. That's the part that really shocked me. That like the kids laughing along with this.
Yeah.
And then when you hear about the other videos and you see the other pictures that there's him, and it's not just the black kid, that there's
Right.
white kids with hair. That's the part of me that people are like immediately, oh, they're picking on the black kid and they're outraged. No, he's enjoying himself too, and he's in on the joke, and it is okay. Like, how many white jokes were made about you when you were in college?
I mean, quite a few. Like, there were quite a few jokes made. What I told you was the worst was just like the trash talking. Like, the trash talking could be pretty brutal. But I mean, that's part of it. I think you asked me once, like, was I ever offended? And I can honestly say, I don't think I ever was like actually offended. In a weird way, it almost made me feel like I had like made it.
You were included.
I almost felt as if like they would have said the same thing to that guy, and now they're saying it to me. So I don't know. It's interesting. I think the key component to everything that we just talked about in the examples we gave, I think people undervalue camaraderie, teamwork. Like when you're on the same team or you're in the same group and it's a really competitive group, there's that bond is unbelievably thick. I would argue thicker than like racial ties, ethnicity ties. Like, it is unbelievable. Like, if you're on a really competitive team and you are good and you are working together, there are very few bonds tighter than that, regardless of like family, class, ethnicity, religious, all of that stuff.
I saw it was almost like a town hall meeting, I think, in a documentary about the N-word. And how they talk to these, and the old people that were from the 70s and from that remember when it was so, when white people were using it in such a vile way, and they were talking about how absurd it is that now that black people use it in talking to themselves, and it ends with A instead of ER, but they were going through the differences in the meaning of it, and how language has changed in the meaning of it, and how it's like a camaraderie thing. And they were interviewing one of the groups was like the Latino population in some of these inner cities. And they're like, once the black guys start referring to me as the N-word, with the A on the, he goes, that's when I know I'm included. He goes, that's when I'm part of the crowd. And so it was this, as you talk about the camaraderie and the friendships and the whatever, that the old people are saying it should be done away with. The young people are saying that's when I knew I was their friend. And it's just such a, depending on your vantage point and your viewpoint and where you fit in the equation, what's offensive and what's friendly, what joke is hurtful and what joke is funny. And like we've said this, we all tell jokes to our friends that we would never say to a stranger.
Sure.
Because our friends know it's a joke and we laugh about it.
Sure.
If you spilled a coffee all down your shirt, like we would talk about it and make fun of it the rest of the day. Right. If I walked down the street and saw someone with a coffee spilled down their shirt, I wouldn't make fun of them.
Right.
So anyway, that's all I got.
No, it's good. Tiger Golf League, 30 seconds. Talk me into it.
It's going to work. It's going to work.
It's going to work. It's in the winter. It's in the winter, which I found very fascinating.
One of the reasons that it's going to work, and I thought about it, Tiger and Rory McIlroy for the 15-second lead up are making a kind of a competitor, along with the PGA Tour, a competitor to live golf, but it's going to be like a skills competition-ish.
And it's
part
one
of it.
day.
One day. And the reason that I'm convinced that this would work is because about a year ago, some moron who's sitting right over there told me about how these pay-per-view things are going to take off, like Tiger Woods and Tom Brady versus Rory McIlroy and Aaron Rodgers, and this made-for-TV event is going to hit. So these things, because Jerry was telling me how stupid it was, and I was telling him how it was going to work, and I could imagine all sorts of skills competitions, playing it off the cart path.
Sure.
Just they're simple closest to the pin. I'm picturing Tin Cup in the clubhouse trying to knock the goose off the post. Bank it. He's going to bank it off the water closet. And, so all these different gimmicky things that when you have teams, that is better than a Friday at, the Greater Greensboro Open, watching guys, because it's fun.
The genius thing is they're going to do Monday night. and I'm pretty sure it's starting after Monday
Night Football ends.
Which that is maybe the most ingenious part about it. The fact that nobody has came up with a sporting event or feature to immediately go on Monday nights after football
ESPN
ends.
has Big Monday.
Okay. But do you think that works?
I mean, it's a college basketball doubleheader.
I know. Maybe this is why I think it's such a better idea. Basketball's on every night. You almost kind of like with football, you need something that's more niche-y of like, it's Monday Night Football.
Right.
You can't watch this every night.
Right.
Like golf is a little bit like that, where it's like, you can't watch this every day. You can't watch it every night. Here it is, Monday night, TGL.
But it's
it makes a ton of sense.
One of the things I said to Jerry is one of the problems with watching golf, and I only ever watch the final round of majors, but it's still, if you want to watch the whole thing, it's a 6-hour commitment.
Yeah.
You can watch this one event where I even said, what happens if you go to a hole and it's me versus you and I pick the club you're using?
Yeah.
And then, okay, well here, there are so many, gimmicky, fun, almost mini golf things.
Sure.
But
now this is going to be inside, I read, which that'll be interesting how it's going to be like a Top Golf electronic type of thing. So I'm sure there'll still be a pin, there'll still be turf or grass, but apparently it's like indoors.
I mean, imagine they put, a fake green on a basketball court, and you got 4 guys or 2 guys, whatever, lined up. The first one to chip it in wins.
Sure.
And you can't bank it. If it banks, it doesn't count. You have to swish it from somewhere.
Sure.
And how good are these guys? Would it take 3 or would it take 13? Because they're that good. Put the ball, we're at half court, you got to chip it in.
The interesting aspect, too, will be the team part of it. I'm curious to see how they work that into the competition.
There's going to be some sort of scoring. There may be old school where you have one guy per competition.
Yeah.
Like the guy that did the vault and Vince Vaughn doing the rings with the cigarette hanging out of his mouth. Or it may be everybody.
Okay, 2 questions to end. How much do you think the PGA paid Tiger Woods to do this with?
Lots.
Do you think it's more than what Live Golf offered?
No.
Here's what I think happened. I think Live Golf made their offer to Tiger, and Tiger, knowing what it meant to the sport, went to the PGA and said, if you don't do something to match this, I'm going with Live Golf. I have no sources. It's all a hypothetical.
Yeah, I'm with you.
But to me, it makes a ton of sense.
This is what I would think. Because he has so much money anyway. And because he is like this ambassador. It almost looks like from the golf world, there's a villainous aspect to Live Golf. And Tiger, the PGA made Tiger, and Tiger made the PGA, all this stuff. But I think that they probably worked in cahoots and said, listen, we need to come up with something.
But I don't think they did this till after.
I agree.
Golf. Okay.
And I think with all of them, because Rory and Tiger, and I think they probably said, yes, if you guys stay here, we can work this out. So you make money, we make money, and it's cool.
This is the last thing. I don't think it competes with what Live Golf is doing to them. I still think what Live Golf is doing to them has the potential to bleed them out. I still believe that.
Well,
with this.
I think what it's going to do is alter how the PGA works. Because right now they have a tournament every weekend. And you turn on some Sundays and it's Tony Finau and nobody else you've ever heard of. Like the majors are still the majors.
Right.
And the crazy thing about it, which I knew the Masters was its kind of its own entity. And I knew the British Open. But all these guys can basically still play in the U.S. Open. The U.S. Open is an open tournament.
Totally.
And if you want to, they probably can't play in the PGA because the PGA is run by it. But so if Dustin Johnson can play in the Masters, the U.S. Open, and the British Open every year anyway, and be part of the Live Tour, then what's the need of being in the PGA Tour.
I think this is the PGA. I don't want to call it a desperate attempt because I think it's a good idea. But this feels like the PGA like clawing for something. Like they are like, if we just keep going and Live Golf just keeps going, we will die first. And so what are we going to do?
And I've said this long ago. There was always a fascinating difference between golf and NASCAR, which are similar things because it's every weekend. You go this weekend, then you travel somewhere and you do it again. NASCAR, they show up every week. Kevin Harvick is driving every week unless he's hurt, for all those years, Earnhardt. You go to a golf tournament, you don't know who's coming because they don't play every week.
Right.
So do they try to figure out a way that we don't have to play every week, but when we do have an event, the best of the best show up? Now, I know their fear is down the road. How do we build the new breed if they never get to play?
I think one of the smartest things, and I'm a nobody, I think the 4-day thing getting rid of the 4-day would help.
To just go Friday, Saturday, Sunday with no cut?
Saturday, Sunday. You make the cut Saturday, you play Sunday. Like, this is like when you talk about NASCAR people, imagine if NASCAR people had to race Thursday, race Friday, race Saturday, and then race Sunday. They would be like, nah, dude, like I'm taking next weekend off. Like, I'll see you in Daytona.
Well,
so I think golf is very similar of like, if you only made them play Saturday to make the cut and then Sunday to go out and win it, I think you'd be amazed at how many golfers would still, like, on a weekend basis show up. I think the 4-day thing crushes it.
And I get it. It's traditional, but is it necessary? That's a good question.
Do you need 4 days to figure out, like, who the best golfer? Like, most people, like, I'm trying to think of an example. If I go play pickup basketball, like in a league, we play almost the same amount as an NBA game, and we decide who the winner is, and it's done. If you and I went and golfed right now, we wouldn't play Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then determine the winner after Sunday.
No,
like, there's a gap, there's a disconnect between what, like, the average golfer's expectation is to decide a winner versus what these tournaments' expectation is to decide a winner.
No, I'm with you. It'd be like if Major League Baseball all of a sudden said, forget it, we're playing 7 innings. Yeah. And the NBA said we're playing 10-minute quarters. And, at the end of the game, it would still be over and there'd still be a winner.
Right.
And whether there was a little bit less So if the NFL came out and said instead of playing, we're going to high school and we're playing 4 12-minute quarters.
Yes. You know what would be interesting, too, for golf? It would be fascinating to see their ratings because I bet you they would skyrocket on Saturday and Sunday.
To see who had to make the cut on Saturday.
Yes.
Maybe.
I bet you their ratings would go up significantly if they didn't have the Thursday, Friday. I really believe
would the weekend ratings go up? Yeah, maybe.
I think.
Maybe.
There you go. You got 10 seconds, then we're leaving.
No, it's good. It's very interesting stuff. I'm glad the Little League thing cleared up because we talked about it yesterday and we thought it was a whole bunch of hoodoo about nothing. Yes. That's not the cliche. Not hoodoo. What's the word? Much ado about nothing. Ado about nothing. And so there you go.
All right. Thank you guys for watching the Midday Show. Be sure to go to NorthcentralPa.com for all of your local news.
And if you're a student debt person, apparently at 2:15, if you're watching this live, Biden is making some announcement. So you may have just saved some money, and we're going to figure some stuff out here in a little bit.
Yeah. Also, anybody who commented today, because we did have some great comments and some different people say things. Thank you for commenting. Sorry we didn't get to them. I really do appreciate it when people comment. So I always feel bad like when we don't get to go through them. So thank you guys for commenting. I promise you we will get your comment the next time. I'm Jeff Everett. He's Mark Messina. We'll see you later.
Later.